The true meaning of discipline, you know what most people get wrong about discipline? They think it's punishment. They think it's suffering. They think it's about restriction, about saying no to the good things in life. But the truth is, discipline isn't a cage, it's the key. It's not about taking freedom away, it's about earning the kind of freedom that only consistency can buy. When you hear the word discipline, what comes to mind? Probably someone grinding in silence, maybe waking up at 4 a.m., maybe running miles in the cold, maybe saying no to the things everyone else says yes to. And you think, that's tough, but that's not the real picture, that's just the surface. The true meaning of discipline goes far deeper than routines or schedules. It's not about what you do, it's about who you're becoming while you do it. See, motivation is about feeling good. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Motivation will give you a rush. It'll get you started. Discipline will give you results. It'll keep you going when the excitement fades. And here's the part no one likes to hear. Your life will always reflect what you repeat. Every action, every habit, every small decision becomes part of who you are. Discipline is how you choose to shape that reflection, intentionally. When you wake up early not because you have to, but because you said you would, that's discipline. When you hold yourself to your word, when you do what you said you'd do long after the feeling is gone, that's self-respect. Because discipline at its core is just another word for self-respect. It's you proving to yourself that your word actually means something. Think about it. How many times have you made a promise to yourself and then broken it? I'll start tomorrow. I'll eat better. I'll stop procrastinating. Every time you break that promise, you chip away at your confidence, your self-belief, your trust in your own word. But every time you keep it, no matter how small the promise, you rebuild that trust. You tell yourself, I can rely on me. And that's power most people will never know. Discipline is not built in loud moments. It's built in the quiet ones, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when it's just you and the choice in front of you. That's where it lives. That's where character grows. The gym, the study table, the work desk, they're not just places of routine, they're battlegrounds for your future self. And the thing about discipline, it's not something you're born with, it's something you train like a muscle. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you're training that muscle. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you're reinforcing it, until one day it's not something you force, it's something you are. Most people see discipline as restriction. But what they don't realize is that lack of discipline is the real prison, because when you don't have discipline, you're controlled by your impulses, your moods, your distractions. You become a slave to comfort. Discipline, on the other hand, is control not of others, but of yourself. It's what allows you to say, I run my life. My feelings don't. And here's the truth, discipline doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. It's not about avoiding challenges. It's about building the strength to handle them without falling apart. When you're disciplined, you don't panic when things go wrong. You don't crumble under pressure. You adapt. You focus. You endure. That's why the most successful people in the world all have one thing in common: discipline. Not luck, not talent, not timing, discipline. Because while everyone else is talking about what they're going to do, the disciplined are doing it. They're not thinking about how they feel. They're acting on who they want to be. And that's another key. Discipline isn't about what you want right now. It's about what you want most. The difference between those two is the difference between average and unstoppable. You might want to sleep in, but you want success more. You might want comfort, but you want greatness more. You might want ease, but you want growth more. Discipline is that decision, over and over again, to choose your future self over your present feelings. Every time you act with discipline, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. You're telling your mind, this is who I am now. That's how identity shifts happen, not in big moments of inspiration, but in small moments of repetition. You don't become disciplined by wanting to. You become disciplined by acting like it. And maybe that's what makes it so rare, because discipline isn't glamorous. It's not loud, it's not exciting. It's quiet, it's repetitive, it's often invisible. It's choosing to keep going when no one's cheering. But those moments, the boring, lonely, quiet ones, those are where greatness is built. When people look at someone and say, wow, they're so disciplined, what they're really seeing is years of invisible commitment. They're seeing the result of thousands of decisions made in silence. The world sees the outcome, the success, the calm confidence, the control, but they don't see the process. The mornings when it was hard, the nights when it was exhausting, the emotions that screamed, stop, and were ignored. That's the true meaning of discipline. It's not about controlling time, it's about controlling you. It's about mastering your impulses, aligning your actions with your intentions, and building a version of yourself that does not break under pressure. Because when you can control yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your habits, you can control the direction of your entire life. The emotional resistance point, every single person who's ever tried to change their life has faced this exact moment. That invisible wall that shows up right when things start getting hard. You wake up one day and suddenly everything inside you says, not today. Your body feels heavy, your mind feels foggy, your energy disappears. You tell yourself you'll start again tomorrow, and just like that, momentum dies. That wall, that resistance, is the real battlefield. That's the emotional resistance point, the moment where discipline either collapses or becomes unbreakable. It's not the work itself that's hard. It's the voice in your head that whispers excuses. That voice that tells you to take it easy, that you've done enough, that you can rest for just one day. But that one day turns into a week, a month, a year of waiting for the right time. The truth is, the right time never comes. There's only this moment, the one where you feel resistance, but act anyway. That's where real discipline lies. Your emotions will lie to you. They'll try to convince you that you're tired, that you're not ready, that it doesn't matter today. But emotions are temporary. They change like weather. If you build your life on them, you'll be unstable forever. Discipline is the decision to keep your word even when your emotions don't cooperate. It's the power to say, I don't need to feel like it to do it. Think about it. Every time you push through discomfort, every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen your mind. You're teaching yourself that feelings are not commands. You're reminding your brain that emotions can scream all they want, but action is still your choice. That's how mental toughness is built, not by suppressing emotion, but by learning to move through it without losing control. The emotional resistance point is where most people quit because they mistake discomfort for a sign to stop. But discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the invitation, it's the test that asks, do you really mean what you said? Anyone can be consistent when things are easy, when they're inspired, when they feel good. But true discipline begins the moment the motivation disappears. That's when your character shows up. When your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and your bed feels warm, that's not a battle with sleep. That's a battle with emotion. When you sit down to work and your mind says, I'll just scroll for a few minutes, that's not about distraction, that's resistance. When you've had a long day and your brain says, you deserve to skip this one time, that's not kindness, that's emotion trying to protect comfort. It's sneaky, it's persuasive. And if you listen to it long enough, you'll start believing it's rational. But here's the secret. Emotions lose their power when you stop negotiating with them. When you stop trying to argue, justify, or debate. The disciplined mind doesn't waste energy explaining itself to feelings. It just acts. Because every negotiation with comfort ends the same way comfort wins. But when you take action without permission, you take back control. The emotional resistance point is the exact place where transformation happens. That's why it feels painful. Growth always does. You're literally fighting against the old version of yourself, the one who avoids effort, who hides behind feelings, who waits for perfect conditions. Every time you push through that resistance, you kill a piece of that old version. You outgrow it. There's a reason people admire those who are disciplined. It's because they've learned how to do what others won't. They've learned how to move while afraid, how to focus while frustrated, how to stay consistent while uninspired. They've learned how to act without needing to feel ready. And that's rare. Because most people spend their entire lives waiting for the right emotion to show up. Discipline doesn't wait. It creates motion first, and emotion follows later. You don't feel like working out until you start moving. You don't feel like creating until you begin. You don't feel motivated until you've already taken action. That's how it works. Feelings are followers, not leaders, and when you finally understand that, you become unstoppable. The emotional resistance point is also where self-respect is built. Because when you push through the part of you that wants to quit, you prove to yourself that you can trust your own word. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That's what confidence really is. It's not positive thinking, it's evidence. The evidence that you've survived the resistance before, and you'll do it again. Every person hits resistance differently. For some, it's anxiety. For others, it's fear, laziness, distraction, doubt. It wears a different mask every day. But it's always the same enemy, the part of you that wants comfort more than progress. The disciplined mind recognizes that resistance is not a reason to stop, it's a signal that you're on the right path. Because resistance only shows up when something important is at stake. So the next time you feel it, that heaviness, that hesitation, that mental friction, remember that it's not weakness, it's the threshold. You're standing right in front of the line that separates who you are from who you're trying to become. And crossing that line doesn't take talent. It doesn't take inspiration. It takes a single decision to move anyway. When you train yourself to act despite emotion, something incredible happens. You start to notice that resistance loses its grip. The things that once felt impossible become normal. The habits that once drained you start to feel automatic. The fear that once stopped you starts to fade. Because you've taught your mind that emotion doesn't control you, discipline does. And that's where true strength comes from. Not from feeling fearless, but from moving while fear still whispers in your ear. Not from waiting for clarity, but from acting while doubt tries to cloud your vision. That's how the disciplined live. They move through the storm instead of waiting for it to pass. They've learned that emotions are signals, not stop signs. And that's the moment where average ends and greatness begins. Silence over excuses. There's a certain kind of person you notice without ever hearing a word from them. They don't announce their plans, they don't explain their process, and they definitely don't beg for validation, they just move. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. That silence, unshakable, grounded, unbothered, isn't weakness. It's mastery. Because the most disciplined people in the world don't argue with their emotions, and they don't argue with excuses. They act. They understand that noise doesn't build results. Discipline does. Most people are addicted to explaining. They explain why they didn't start, why they can't continue, why something's in their way. They have an answer for every failure except the truth: they simply didn't do it. Excuses make people feel safe because they protect the ego. They sound intelligent, even rational. But at their core, excuses are just a sophisticated way of saying, I didn't take control. And that's why the disciplined don't waste time making them. When you start living with discipline, silence becomes your ally. You stop talking about what you're going to do and you start doing it. You stop seeking comfort from validation and you start seeking satisfaction from progress. Because the truth is, talking about your goals triggers the same dopamine rush as achieving them. It makes your brain feel like you've already done the work, and that's the trap. That's why disciplined people talk less and execute more. They let results speak louder than promises. Excuses have a pattern. They always begin with, I would, but, and end with nothing. Nothing changes, nothing moves, nothing grows. And here's the thing, your brain loves excuses because they protect you from guilt. They protect you from accountability. But discipline doesn't give you that escape. Discipline looks you in the eye and says, you said you would, so do it. No softness, no sugarcoating, just truth. There's a reason silence feels uncomfortable for so many people. Because in silence, there's no one to convince but yourself. There's no audience to clap, no one to pity you, no one to agree with your reasons. It's just you, your habits, and the mirror. That's where excuses die. And that's exactly why discipline grows there. When you watch someone truly disciplined, you'll notice they rarely defend themselves. If they miss a day, they don't post about bouncing back. They don't write a speech about their comeback. They just return quietly and continue as if nothing happened. Because to them, consistency isn't something to celebrate, it's a standard. That's the difference between the disciplined and the distracted. One talks about the plan, the other lives it. The truth is, excuses are just stories we tell to avoid the discomfort of responsibility. I don't have time means I didn't prioritize. I'm not ready means I'm afraid to fail. I'll start when it's perfect means I don't want to start. The disciplined strip away those layers and look at the truth directly. They know that success doesn't care about the story, it cares about the action. There's a calmness in people who live with discipline because they're not constantly defending their choices. They don't need to explain why they're working late, why they're skipping distractions, why they're focused on their own lane. They've made peace with the price of discipline, and they've accepted it fully. When you reach that point, silence becomes strength, not isolation. Every excuse you make trains your brain to settle. Every silent action you take trains it to rise. Over time, you become what you repeat, either someone who explains or someone who executes. And when you start choosing execution, you realize how much energy you use to waste convincing yourself instead of proving yourself. Discipline doesn't need a defense. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need to be understood. The truly disciplined understand that their time is too valuable to spend justifying their decisions to people who don't share their vision. They don't owe the world an explanation for their effort. They owe themselves results. In a world where everyone is talking, posting, sharing, over-explaining, the person who works in silence becomes almost intimidating. Because silence can't be faked. Silence holds weight. It shows you don't need noise to prove worth. You don't need a crowd to validate your purpose. You don't need permission to move. Excuses are loud because they're fragile. They need to be repeated to stay believable. But discipline is quiet because it's solid. It doesn't depend on approval. It doesn't need to be justified. It just is. When you live in that mindset, people notice. They might not understand it, but they feel it. Because there's something powerful about a person who no longer seeks sympathy, who no longer complains, who no longer broadcasts their struggle, just progress. When you stop explaining your effort, the world starts paying attention. Because silence draws curiosity. People start asking, how did they do it? They don't realize that the answer isn't magic, it's just consistency without commentary. The disciplined don't chase attention because they're too busy earning it through results. And the thing about silence, it doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means you've learned to separate emotion from execution. It means you've learned that action doesn't need an audience. Every rep, every study session, every late night, every small step forward, that's your statement. The disciplines speak through evidence. Their proof is visible in their progress, not their words. Every time you feel the urge to explain why you didn't do something, catch yourself. That's the moment to practice silence. Instead of saying, I didn't have time, say nothing and make time. Instead of saying, I'll do better next week, say nothing and do better now. Let your behavior replace your apology. Let your action replace your excuse. Because there's something unshakable about a person who no longer relies on words to define their discipline. Someone who's moved beyond the need to be seen and into the space where they simply are. That's the level where discipline becomes identity, where silence becomes your proof, where excuses stop existing, not because you've stopped struggling, but because you've stopped giving struggle a voice. The power of routine, there's a strange thing that happens when you start doing the same thing every day. At first, it feels mechanical, even boring. You wake up at the same time, you eat the same breakfast, you follow the same plan, you go to bed at the same hour, and your mind starts to whisper, is this really progress? But here's the truth that most people never understand: greatness isn't built in bursts of motivation. It's built in repetition. Routine is the quiet architect of every successful life. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's powerful beyond measure. Most people think they need variety to feel alive. They chase excitement, they want change every day, new experiences, fresh energy, but discipline thrives in predictability. Routine isn't about limiting your life, it's about freeing your mind from chaos. It gives structure to your energy, direction to your time, and clarity to your purpose. The disciplined don't see routine as a prison, they see it as armor. Because when you have a routine, distractions lose their power. You don't wake up wondering what to do, you already know. Routine removes negotiation, and that's everything. Think about how much time people waste deciding, should I go to the gym today? Should I work now or later? Should I stay consistent or rest? Every question like that drains willpower. The disciplined don't ask those questions. Their routine answers for them. It's automatic. They don't wait to feel ready. They've already decided ahead of time. That's how they win before the day even begins. There's something deeply grounding about waking up and following a set rhythm, because life is unpredictable. Emotions fluctuate, circumstances change, but routine gives you something stable to hold on to. It's the one thing that doesn't shift when the world does. It's your anchor in chaos. When you're overwhelmed, your routine keeps you steady. When you're uninspired, it keeps you moving. When you're exhausted, it reminds you that progress doesn't need excitement. It just needs consistency. The truth is, excellence looks boring up close. The world only sees the highlights, the achievements, the applause, the end results. But what they don't see are the endless repetitions behind it. The early mornings, the lonely nights, the tiny habits repeated so many times they become part of your nature. That's the power of routine. It takes what's forced and turns it into instinct. It transforms effort into identity. When something becomes part of your routine, it stops feeling like work. It becomes who you are. You don't have to convince yourself to show up anymore. You just do. That's when you know discipline has matured into mastery. You've shifted from trying to live better to naturally living better. That's the beauty of a well-built routine. It doesn't require willpower every time, just commitment at the beginning. Routine isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up consistently, even on the bad days, even when you don't feel like it, even when it seems pointless. Because those are the days that separate the committed from the casual. Every time you show up anyway, you strengthen the foundation beneath your success. You might not see it immediately, but something inside you is solidifying. Confidence grows quietly in repetition. When you repeat the right things daily, you don't need motivation, you have momentum. And momentum is unstoppable once it starts rolling. That's why the people who stick to their routine seem almost unshakable. They've built a rhythm so steady that life can throw chaos at them, and they'll still find their beat. They'll still move forward. Because their strength doesn't come from emotion, it comes from structure. But building that kind of routine isn't easy. Your mind will resist it at first. It'll say, this is boring. This is too strict. This isn't fun. That's your comfort zone talking. The same comfort zone that's kept you from reaching your potential. The same comfort zone that wants freedom without responsibility, success without sacrifice. The disciplined understand that the routine isn't meant to be entertaining, it's meant to be effective. You might think routine kills creativity, but the opposite is true. When your basic actions are automatic, your mind has more room to think, to create, to innovate. Routine gives you space to be present. It creates flow. Because when you're not constantly deciding what to do next, you can focus fully on what's in front of you. That's why the most creative, most productive, most peaceful people all follow routines. They've eliminated decision fatigue. Every successful athlete, artist, or leader has one thing in common: they don't rely on motivation. They rely on ritual. Their days are structured with intention. They've built a pattern of actions that, over time, create excellence. And they don't break it when they're tired or busy, they protect it like a treasure. Because they know their routine is what keeps them sharp. It's what keeps them aligned with their goals. When you stick to a routine long enough, it starts to redefine your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to change and start seeing yourself as someone who simply is consistent. That identity shift is everything. Because once your mind believes, this is who I am, the effort feels natural. You stop needing to push yourself, you're pulled by your own standard. Routine also teaches patience. It reminds you that progress is not about one massive leap. It's about 1,000 small steps done daily. Most people quit because they don't see immediate results, but the disciplined know that routine is the process of planting seeds. You water them every day. You trust the growth even when you can't see it. One day, you look back and realize the routine you built quietly has changed everything. That's the hidden power of routine. It's not dramatic. It's not flashy. It doesn't give you a rush, but it builds empires in silence. It shapes bodies, minds, and lives. It's the invisible structure behind every visible success. And once you fall in love with the process instead of the outcome, the routine stops being a task and becomes a lifestyle. Facing the mirror, there comes a moment in everyone's journey where the noise fades, the excuses crumble, and you're left standing in front of the mirror. No filters, no distractions, just you and the truth you've been avoiding. That's the moment discipline truly begins. Because discipline isn't about controlling your environment, it's about confronting yourself. It's about looking into that reflection and realizing that the person staring back is both the problem and the solution. Most people avoid that confrontation. They'll keep themselves busy, they'll scroll, they'll complain, they'll talk about change, but they won't face the mirror. Because the mirror doesn't lie. It shows you the cost of your comfort. It shows you every time you broke your own promise. It shows you who you could have been if you had stayed consistent. And for many, that's terrifying. It's easier to look away than to admit that the biggest obstacle isn't the world, it's you. Discipline forces you to face that truth. It strips away the illusions. It doesn't care about your reasons, your history, or your story. It asks one simple question: are you doing what you said you would do? There's no hiding from that question. You can lie to people, you can lie to social media, but you can't lie to the mirror. And that's why most people never reach the highest level of discipline. Because it demands complete honesty. When you start living with discipline, the mirror becomes your teacher. It reflects your progress, but it also reflects your neglect. It shows you the consequences of skipping the small things. It reminds you that discipline isn't a performance, it's a relationship with yourself. And like any relationship, it thrives on honesty, effort, and consistency. There's a kind of pain that comes with self-confrontation. It's not physical, it's emotional. It's the sting of realizing that you've been in your own way all along. But that pain is necessary, because only when you feel it do you begin to change it. The mirror doesn't judge you, it reveals you. It gives you a chance to decide who you want to become. Every disciplined person has faced that moment. The moment they stopped blaming circumstances and started taking ownership. The truth is, the mirror doesn't care about excuses. It doesn't care if you were tired, busy, stressed, or unmotivated. It only reflects what you did or didn't do. That's what makes it powerful, because once you accept that, once you take responsibility for everything in that reflection, you become untouchable. The world can't control someone who's already owned their flaws. When you truly face yourself, you begin to see the patterns that keep you stuck. You see the habits that sabotage your growth, the fears that hold you back, the justifications that sound noble but keep you small. Discipline is what helps you break those patterns. It replaces emotional reaction with intentional action. It turns self-awareness into self-command. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you rewrite the story you tell yourself. You start proving in real time that you're not your past, you're not your bad habits, you're not your excuses. You're the actions you take today. That's what the mirror shows when you're honest enough to look closely. It shows potential waiting to be claimed. The mirror also reveals how easy it is to settle, how quickly you can convince yourself that good enough is enough. But deep down, you know it isn't. You know when you're capable of more. You can feel it. That's why comfort never truly satisfies you, it numbs you. The more you avoid the mirror, the louder that inner voice becomes. The one that whispers, you were meant for more than this. Discipline is what allows you to answer that voice instead of running from it. When you stand in front of the mirror after a long day, you know the truth immediately. You can feel it in your gut. You know if you gave your best or if you coasted. That quiet moment of reflection is more honest than any applause or praise. And that's what makes discipline sacred. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real. It's about saying, I didn't quit, I didn't hide, I showed up. Even if you failed, even if it wasn't pretty, you faced yourself. And that's something most people never do. They spend their whole lives running from accountability, from reflection, from the truth. but you can't improve what you won't confront. The disciplined understand that the mirror isn't a punishment, it's feedback. Every day you face it, you gather data. You learn where you hesitated, where you grew, where you fell short. And you use that information not to shame yourself, but to sharpen yourself. Facing the mirror also exposes the gap between your intentions and your execution. Everyone says they want to change, but few are willing to live like it. The mirror doesn't care about intentions. It only reflects action. That's why discipline demands that you close that gap. It asks you to align your behavior with your values, to stop talking about what matters and start proving it through repetition. When you finally embrace that reflection, something changes inside you. You stop seeking validation because you already know where you stand. You stop chasing quick fixes because you've learned that real progress takes time. You stop fearing failure because you've already faced worse, your own truth. That's when discipline becomes more than a habit. It becomes a mirror itself. Every action you take reflects who you are becoming. Every day becomes another chance to refine that reflection. The mirror isn't your enemy, it's your compass. It points you toward the version of yourself that discipline is trying to create. And when you can look into it without flinching, without hiding, without pretending, that's when you know you're growing. Because facing the mirror means facing reality, and facing reality is where transformation begins. The silent war within, there's a war that no one sees. No applause, no audience, no recognition. It happens in the quiet corners of your mind every single day. It's not fought with weapons or words, but with choices. Tiny, invisible decisions that determine the direction of your life. This is the silent war within, the battle between who you are and who you know you could be. And discipline is the sword you bring to that fight. You see, most people think discipline is about control, about structure, about waking up early or sticking to routines. But that's only the surface. The real discipline lives in the mind, in that inner dialogue where your weaker self tries to negotiate, to bargain, to delay. It's that voice that whispers, just 5 more minutes, you've done enough, or you can start tomorrow. That's the enemy within. The one that doesn't shout, it whispers. The one that doesn't attack, it comforts. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because comfort kills more dreams than failure ever could. It's quiet, it's reasonable, it sounds kind. It tells you that rest is deserved, that slowing down is fine, that you're doing your best. And sometimes that's true. But most of the time, that voice is just fear in disguise. It's your comfort zone pretending to care about you. Discipline is what cuts through that illusion. It's what separates the person who listens to that voice from the person who confronts it and says, no, we keep going. Every disciplined person knows this war. You wake up and your body says no, but your purpose says yes. You feel tired, uninspired, maybe even lost. But you move anyway. You move because you've realized something powerful. Your emotions don't have to be in charge. The scariest level of discipline is when you no longer wait for motivation. You act without it. You execute without permission. You show up when it's hardest to show up. That's the war most people lose. Because they think it's about how they feel. They wait for the right mood, the perfect moment, the wave of inspiration. But the truth is the war is won in boredom, in repetition, in silence, when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when you feel like nothing's changing, but you still choose to keep going. That's where you break the cycle that keeps most people stuck. The silent war within doesn't end in a single victory. It's fought daily. You win it every morning you don't hit snooze. Every time you push through that last rep, every time you choose growth over comfort, honesty over excuses, progress over pride. Discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about being relentless. It's the decision to fight again and again, even when no one would blame you for giving up. And here's the truth, no one's coming to save you in that war. Not your friends, not your mentors, not your heroes. They can guide you, but they can't fight for you. This war demands solitude. It demands that you build mental armor strong enough to withstand your own doubt. Because the hardest battles aren't fought against the world, they're fought against the part of you that wants to stay safe. That's what most people never understand about discipline. It's not punishment, it's liberation. Every time you conquer that inner voice that tells you to quit, you take back control. You remind yourself that you are stronger than your impulses. You begin to trust yourself again, because nothing builds confidence like keeping promises you made to yourself when no one was watching. That's the kind of quiet pride that disciplined people carry. Not arrogance, not ego certainty. Discipline isn't about being emotionless, it's about being unbreakable. You can feel fear and still move. You can feel doubt and still act. You can feel fatigue and still choose to rise. That's what makes discipline powerful. It teaches you to operate beyond emotion. The disciplined person doesn't wait for the storm to pass. They walk through it step by step, knowing that consistency is the real strength. And make no mistake, the war within never truly ends. You'll always have days where you want to stop. You'll always have moments where you question if it's worth it. You'll always hear that inner voice trying to drag you back into comfort. But discipline teaches you to recognize that voice, not as truth, but as resistance. And resistance is proof that you're moving in the right direction. When you train yourself to fight that inner war, you begin to see life differently. Challenges stop feeling like obstacles, they start feeling like tests. Every moment of discomfort becomes an opportunity to practice control. Every setback becomes fuel, because once you've mastered yourself, there's nothing the outside world can do to break you. You've already faced the hardest opponent, the one inside. That's what separates the disciplined from the average. The average person spends their life negotiating with their weakness, trying to make it comfortable. The disciplined person burns the negotiation table. They stop asking for comfort and start demanding greatness from themselves. They understand that freedom doesn't come from ease. It comes from mastery. And mastery begins the moment you stop running from that inner war. The moment you look it in the eye and say, I see you, and I'm not backing down. Because that's when you start winning, not against others, not against time, but against the version of yourself that was built by excuses. The silent war within is where character is forged. It's where resilience is born. It's where discipline becomes identity. It's the war that no one sees, but everyone feels the result of. The person who wins it doesn't need to announce it. Their actions speak louder than any words ever could. Because when you've conquered yourself, when you've silenced that voice of compromise, when you've proven to yourself that you can't be broken by feelings, you've reached the scariest, purest level of discipline there is. The unseen power of relentless discipline. Discipline isn't about control, it's about freedom. It's the invisible force that separates the ones who talk from the ones who transform. It's the difference between wishing and becoming. Throughout this entire journey, we've seen what true discipline really means. It's not a routine, not a trend, not a motivational high. It's a lifestyle, a battle, a commitment to show up even when every cell in your body screams not to. The scariest level of discipline isn't loud, it's silent. It doesn't need validation because it's built in solitude. It doesn't rely on energy because it's fueled by purpose. It's what makes you unstoppable when others quit. It's what allows you to face the mirror and not look away. It's what turns pain into precision, chaos into control, and doubt into direction. At this level, you stop chasing balance, you build it. You stop chasing motivation, you become it. You stop waiting for perfect moments because you finally understand you are the moment. Every decision, every repetition, every choice to keep going when it doesn't make sense, that's the essence of real power. You learn that the world doesn't reward intentions, it rewards consistency. You understand that discipline isn't something you turn on, it's something you are. It's the quiet fire that burns long after others have burned out. It's the standard you hold yourself to, not because someone's watching, but because you refuse to live beneath your potential. And when you reach that level, you realize something profound. Discipline was never your enemy. It was never here to limit you, to cage you, or to drain you. It was here to free you, to strip away the weakness, the excuses, the noise, to expose the strength that was always inside you. The scariest level of discipline isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming undeniable. It's the version of you that can't be shaken by failure, distracted by comfort, or broken by fear. Because once you've mastered the war within, there's nothing left outside that can defeat you. So the next time you feel tired, lost, or tempted to quit, remember this: you're not fighting for comfort, you're fighting for control. You're fighting to become the kind of person who doesn't need to be told what to do, because they've already decided who they are. That's the scariest level of discipline. The point where consistency becomes your identity, where effort becomes instinct, and where no one, not even your own weakness, can stand in your way.